Alright, so in this problem what we're trying to do is figure out the difference between the maximum and minimum for the elements in an array. We have an array called nums. It has all these numbers. We need to be able to find the maximum number as well as the minimum number, because we are taking the difference as our return value for this problem. Again, this is just how this problem has been defined. The algorithm as far as finding the maximum will go like this. What we're going to do is we're going to visit the very first element, and we're going to assume that that is the biggest element. From there, we're going to move on to the next element and compare it to my current maximum, right? So remember that we set the first element to be our maximum. We are now looking at the second element here, and we're going to go, are you bigger than my current maximum? If you are, then you are the new maximum. And then you go to the next element. And the next element, you're going to go, are you bigger than my current maximum? If you are, then you are going to take the place of that maximum, so on and so forth until you get to the very end of this. So it's going to go to -1. Is 30 smaller than -1? No, so don't update this. Go to the next one. Is 20 bigger than 30? Nope. Next one, is 99 bigger than 30? It is, so you move on. Then finally you hit to the very last one, and you're comparing that element with your current maximum. So at this point in time, as soon as your for loop ends, you do end up with your maximum number. The same type of thinking can be applied for finding the smaller number, of course. What you do is, of course, you have an indicator or a variable to store your minimum number. Again, it is always safe to assume that your first element is your minimum or maximum, because your minimum or maximum element will always be within the array. Some people might set the max and min to be the max int or min int, but it's completely unnecessary. You don't need to think through that, but you could in theory.
Can this claim for payment extracurricular account?
Sorry, no idea. I'm trying to do recording. Alright, so that is the algorithm we're going to use. So now how do we put that into code? As far as the code goes, of course, we are going to set up our for loop that will just traverse that entire array. Nums.length plus plus. So here is a for loop. So again, this should not be the hard part. We're using I as our indexing, and of course within here we're trying to make all these decisions. So we're going to make two variables here called max and min. We're going to set their values to be the very first element in the array. Alright, so once you're inside your for loop, of course, you're going to decide whether or not the current element that you're looking at, which is at index I, is bigger than your maximum. Because if it is, then that current element must take the place of your maximum. So now we're going to update max. And then of course you do the same thing for min. Except now instead of looking at min, you're going to go, alright, as the current element, which is at I, index I, if that is less than my current minimum, we are going to update minimum. Outside of this, of course, what we're going to do is you're just going to return max minus min, which is again in the project or the problem definition. Excuse me. This is saying after the for loop, you should have found your maximum and your minimum, which again we showed in the Excel demo here. And if we click go, you should get the right answers there. So again, the takeaway for this one is really learning how to write a searching algorithm to find your maximum and minimum number. In this case, this array is unsorted, therefore we need to check every single element in here. So we start at the first element, we check if that's the maximum number, right? So we go, all right, let's assume that that's my maximum, and then let's move on to our next element. If the next element is actually bigger than my current minimum, then we update our variable, so on and so forth as you traverse the array, as you visit every single element. And at the very end of it, you should have the maximum number as well as the minimum number from that array. Nope, that doesn't work. Do I stop the recording? Doo-doo-doo.